Welcome to the Exposer. So today we're doing part 3 of exposing Spac Nation PT. So as you know from the previous episode, PT is somewhat of a good character, indeed started to transition from a man who first came from Nigeria and appearing on television preaching sound doctrine to a proud man that is now on a slow but steady quest for money and power. And so PT moves on from Lancaster House. Apparently they couldn't afford to keep up the rent payment, so he stood outside of the door having been refused a key to access the venue on a Sunday morning, along with a few others in despair. Apparently at the time he was still broke, but vowed to make a way. He found himself in a deep prayer not long after that. Allegedly many people ended up leaving when they heard about the news. Bearing in mind the church was already small, so PT took this into offence, but at the same time acknowledged that those who would stick it out with him, they would hunt for a new venue. This will be called Avonmouth, another space located in southeast London. Avonmouth really kicked off in the 2013-2014 era, and this was also when a few of the same pastors around him now also made their debut. The few members of the congregation that stuck it out are now seen to be head pastors of fellowships, and one of them still sings in the choir up till this day. They vowed to stick it out through the tough and thin. PT would mock the pastors during live sermons by saying that other pastors dropped out because instead of fasting and praying for a breakthrough, they would eat in secrecy. That's why PT is now where he is, and they are where they are apparently, which is not true. I can tell you that. When PT says this, it's to make the congregation respect him more, and so-called pastor, and also so that they are called to fast. Dry fasting, that is. They can also focus on that and not eat any food, which will cause them to lose focus. But more importantly, spend money. TK said himself, apparently PT said, if you fast but you don't give, then your fast is pointless. This is Toby's personality. He dictates how and what should be done. And with the help of few young pastors, he slowly began to understand more how to manipulate the youth into coming to church, while slowly releasing away old habits of evangelizing and dressing and doing things. At Avonmouth, they will have meetings in the church which would run on for a long period of time, and where he would preach away. This is the time where one can say his ministry started to pick up a little. From 2014 to 2015, there began to be more of a push, and these young pastors around him, who were in the early mid-20s at the time, their voices became more instrumental in the church too. I think it is good, personally, that the youth have input, because at the end of the day, church is for the community so that God gets the glory. But however, when they are dictating by sitting down in meetings to plan how to bring youth out of desperation, that's when one should anticipate the worst. There would be stories of how Pastor Henry would pray for himself and they will end up flying. I also know that this is the year as well where the Hope Dealer members would also begin to leave their former churches and join Spac Nation. Toby would then begin to clean up his dress sense, and members of the church began to start hearing more messages about the prosperity gospel from here on forth. Allegedly, during this time, things would also be happening behind the scenes. However, Spac didn't quite have any influence or buzz in social media at the time, and also because less people made a fuss over it. It would easily be overlooked and swept under the carpet. The congregation will slowly begin to move away from the small numbers they once used to have into being able to fill up small venues with 200 to 300 people. At this time, it was still called Spac Ministries still. One of their services, which really impacted the members' lives, was called Emerging Triumphant Leaders. Then they left to join Hilton Hotel, Canary Wharf, and here youth even began to sit on the floor, and overflow began. So now that PT started to see progression, because the numbers was now way above anything he ever witnessed, he started to develop more ideas on how to get more youth to the church. And he was surrounded by young people. So he knew what young people liked. And he knew what they liked was anything to do with finance. If he provided them with an opportunity to have their own businesses, or an opportunity for them to do whatever they wanted to do, these people would join the church. So that became his strategy. So at the time, because Spac were under the radar, it was easy for them to operate. So a lot of their members would allegedly go and evangelize and get young people to come to Spac, and they would promise these young people a career, these young people a chance to have their own businesses. So remember in the first episode where I told you guys a story of what PT allegedly done, because this is a story he's told a million people, and he mentioned when he came over from Nigeria, he had nothing, and he worked as a kitchen porter where he was earning £400 a month, and he gave £200 to the church. So this is a tweet from himself, and you lot can see that he basically said the same thing there. So he continued to preach this almost every other week, and he knew that it would touch the youth more than it did with the older generation. Because when he started preaching and he had older members, at the time he wasn't doing so well financially. So this message did not deliver the wealth that he thought he would get from preaching out this message. But with the youth, he was now financially okay. He was dressing better. So he knew that if he delivered this message to the youth, that would encourage them to give. Because now they have a man in front of them who mentioned he came from nothing, he was broke, came to this country with a shirt and one trouser, and that was it. And he was given, despite the difficulty, he still gave half of his money to the church. So he knew that the young people would look at it and be like, wow, how did this guy do this? And he would encourage them, it's because he gave half of his money to the church. So the £200 became the symbol of Spac Nation. Because now they looked at PT like he was a superhuman. They looked at him almost in a sense that he was God. So in this picture, this is PT's brother. They call him Reverend Apple. So it's important for you guys to know about him, because he's also a pastor and he used to have his own church, which had nothing to do with Spac Nation. But when his church closed down, allegedly a lot of his members followed him into Spac Nation. So this helped Spac grow even bigger. He isn't as flashy as PT, and to a certain extent, you can say he's a bit more serious when it comes to the word. He does spend a lot of his time preaching about things from the Bible. But the only issue with him is the fact that him being part of his brother's church, to a certain extent, corrupted him a little bit. Because even though he would preach the word most times, he would also encourage people to give at least £200 a month. Well, he would encourage the core members to give at least £200 every month. And that's possibly his own downfall. Apart from that, he hasn't really done too many things. He's a married man, lives with his family. So with all the things that goes on at Spac, where members are all living with each other and things like that, I believe he just lives with his family and his kids. I believe he's not involved when it comes to the being together all the time thing. But he does have some type of influence, because his former members who followed him would also want to give at least £200 every month if this is what the main man was preaching himself. But apart from that, that's all I have to say about him. Now, the lady on the left is known as Lucy. She's allegedly PT's wife. The reason I say allegedly is because there's no evidence that her and PT are both married. She shares the same surname as him on social media, but in real life, she has her own surname. And there's a lot of reason behind that. They did have a celebration, which basically displayed a marriage. That's amongst like the family members and friends and whatnot. But it could have happened in Nigeria. But we don't really know 100% if they were even married in Nigeria. But what we do know is in the UK, they are not legally married. Now, in terms of her as a woman, she is a nice, kind woman. She's not controversial and keeps herself to herself. Her only problem is she's very, very submissive to a man. She allows him to do whatever he wants to do. And everyone in Spac or outside Spac would see that. He spends more time with his members than he does with his wife. As a matter of fact, you will never see his wife with him on any video. Or you never even see his wife with him walking together. It's very rare. Part of the reason is because she doesn't like the limelight and she's quite a reserved person. But it brings a lot of question marks also to why. Because as the first lady of a church, people would need to know that you are his wife. But then it could be PT's decision and it could be her decision. They do also have 2 kids together. So like I mentioned, allegedly, they are not legally married in the UK anyways. So for a pastor to have 2 kids with a woman that he's allegedly not married to, there's question marks there. So Lucy has opened 3 businesses online. And one of her first businesses is Spac Nation Limited. Now, why would Spac Nation Limited be under her name and not under PT's name? There's a big question mark over that also. It's dissolved, by the way. And there's Zero Care Homes, which is still active, which will probably dissolve anytime soon. CJC Property Maintenance, another company that is dissolved. So why would she open 3 businesses online? Why would he allow his wife to open 3 businesses online? And his name isn't connected to any of these businesses that open online. That tells me that this is a man that is very selfish and that only cares about himself. Because if he was a responsible person, he would never allow his wife to even open up these businesses, to do any of these things? And why is everyone around him opening up businesses and dissolving them, but not him? So this is where people need to understand. It's because it has nothing to do with his wife. This is why I said she's very submissive. That's the reason she's done this. Now there's rumors that since they're exposing, the relationship has turned a bit sour because of a lot of the things that's been coming out. And this is mainly his fault. And for a woman who's in her own corner, doesn't like controversial things, to be part of this organization, I can only imagine how tough it must be for her to be seeing this. So this exposing isn't to try and destroy anybody's life or to try and ruin anybody's reputation. It's for people to see the truth. And unfortunately, she has to know that her husband, or her alleged husband, is doing things that he shouldn't be doing. And where I say she's also responsible is because there has been incident that has occurred inside the church, and she has been notified, and she has tried to resolve it in the best possible way that she could. But these are the signs that she's fully aware of all the loans and all the accusations that's been thrown at the church. There is times where he uses his wife to take care of the women in the church. Meaning, if a girl's gone through a situation to do with, don't know, a partner or anything like that, this is when PT would allegedly get his wife to basically sweet talk the person out of it. Or if it needed a girl to move in with them into one of the trap houses, if it needed someone to persuade them, PT would get his wife to do that allegedly. So she's also being exploited to do things that they can't do, basically. Because they know that her character, her coming across as a kind of shy woman, it's easy for her to persuade someone to do something. Now I know a lot of you guys want to know why he spends more time with his members than he does with his actual partner. But the reason behind that will be explained on another video, because it connects to something else. Because there's a reason why he's around them most of the time. And there's a reason why you'll never see his wife there and his kids there. But it will be explained in a different video. But you guys just need to understand that it is true, he spends most of his time surrounded by his members, and he needs them to be around him all the time for his ego and many other things. But again, that brings a big question mark. Why would his partner allow him to do that? Even if it's the benefit in terms of finance and other things, it's still not right for a pastor especially to spend more time with his members than he would with his partner.
When you are trending on Twitter without your effort, now that's beautiful. You've reached this stage. And as you know, Spac Nation, let me tell you something. Let me tell you a secret tonight. About this time last year, we sold our first seed into the media. Before then, there was no single media coverage, We paid for the first one with Financial Times. I knew that once you've had a seed time harvest works, it doesn't have to be big seed, huge one. And at the time it was meaningless. But when I tell you about seed, that now you'll understand. Then what happened afterwards? Now we have reaped coverage that money cannot buy. Do you understand that? We had reaped back an average harvest of coverage that money could not buy. But what we did in time was to put down the one money could buy, and we bought it. But it was a seed into that world. It's saying that you will take over that world. I had a 45k per tech Philippe then, and I sold that plus other money into that and opened a door. You understand? Sowing is amazing. I'm telling you. The moment that was true in November, right? We're gonna celebrate 1 year of that. Because that's the seed. So I will never forget that. I won't forget that, because that is the seed that opened the other doors. Time flies, right? And time flies because a lot of things have happened after that even makes that irrelevant. That's the thing with the seed. Usually the harvest will be bigger I don't know, just one Saturday, you had over 6 or 7 newspaper coverage. Over 6 on one Saturday, more than 6 or 7. I don't. Yeah. So what newspaper were Hope dealers in today? I'm not sure. Yeah, you were in the paper. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think it's Evening Standard, the last one, but we didn't know it had a paper edition.
Oh, really?
So we thought it was just internet. But you were there. In fact, I wanted to post it, say, look at author here, Evening Standard. The guy was in Evening Standard and he didn't even know it. People are killing and fighting and lying to be on those pages. How did you get there? Seed